All right, hello everybody and welcome to our webinar here today. So today we are going to be going over the topic of getting hired with a criminal record. And before we get started, I do just want to go over a couple of things here. So you will probably see a GoToWebinar panel on your screen, and it is there if you'd like it there, but you can minimize it with the orange button if you would like to. But I do want to note that if you have any questions during our presentation, we will have a short Q&A at the end with our speaker. So feel free to put in any questions you have during the presentation, or also feel free to save them until the end, just in case they might be answered before then. So today's presentation will be about 30 minutes or so, might be a little less, might be a little more. So again, just make sure that you save those till the end if you need to, otherwise send them in during the presentation too. So here at Diversity Jobs, since our redesign, we do have things like community pages. If you're in specific communities, there are tons of different things on each one of those pages that you can look into, including blogs, holidays, tons of different stuff there. We also have job fairs and events on our website, some being virtual and some are in person that you can sign up for. We have free blogs and career advice that you can look into, as well as diversity insights on diversityjobs.com. And then we also have our upcoming webinars and then also our previous webinars. So just to note, all of these are recorded. So they will be placed on our website in case you need to hop off or in case you ever join one and you can't make it for whatever reason. It will be on our website and then sent out in the follow-up email as well. But I did also want to note, we do get a lot of questions if these slides are sent out, which unfortunately they are not. But again, they are recorded and they will be on our website. So then today we have Dorenda Hamarlund, and Dorenda is the Workforce Development Specialist for Pennsylvania Corrections. And in this role, she promotes workforce development for inmates and reentrants, both within corrections and to external partners. The position was implemented to foster meaningful learning opportunities and sustain employment and reduce their chance of recidivism. Dorenda is the single point of contact for outside employers, community colleges, training programs, and unions who wish to partner with corrections. Dorenda joined the Pennsylvania DOC in February 2017 after 17 years with the California Department of Corrections. Dorenda has extensive experience in implementing training and certifications for inmates and working with outside organizations and companies to increase employability skills with corrections. And then my name is Josh, and I will be the moderator there. So I will pass it over to Dorenda. So thank you so much, Dorenda, for being here today.
Thank you for hosting me and allowing me to present on this. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I look forward to hopefully hearing from people afterwards. So thank you again. My name is Dorenda Hamarlund. I am the Workforce Development Specialist. I know that there's a number of you that are on here that are maybe not from Pennsylvania. There are a few Pennsylvania specific information in here, but I'm going to try to keep it as broad as possible since, as Josh mentioned, I'm originally from the state of California. So I do have some knowledge from out there. There are some very general things that it doesn't matter what state you're in whenever it comes to getting a job, whether you have a criminal background or not. So I'm gonna just kind of go through a few things and hopefully give you guys some tips and tricks a little bit. I'm not sure how I got muted all of a sudden. A lot of what I do when it comes to my role is really a lot of educating. It's educating the public on what we do inside the prisons and how that can benefit employers when it comes to looking for job seekers and to fill positions. You know, a lot of people come out of prison, they got educated while they were inside, they received certifications, they received training, inmate employment, And it's really just a matter of education. How do we let the public know that that's happening behind our walls? So that's a lot of what I do. And then I also work with employers directly here in Pennsylvania, and I do cover the whole state of Pennsylvania. I work with employers directly to help fill their workforce needs and find out what job openings they have and get that information out to our reentrants looking for work. So a little information, like I said, the national unemployment rate as of April 2023 is 3.4%. Now, this is way down considering what it was during COVID. It's right around, it might be even lower than what it was pre-COVID, where we saw a really huge low unemployment rate. Pennsylvania, however, we are still at a 4.1% unemployment rate. And out of all 50 states and District of Columbia, Washington, D.C., we are the 45th highest unemployment rate. That's insane to me. And we're not even 1 whole % higher. It's not much higher than the national, but we're 45 out of 51 right now. So we absolutely have job openings, and I have ways to help fill those positions. But first, let's talk a little bit about some barriers to employment. And, you know, I'm going to talk specifically, usually these are barriers to employment for reentrants, but sometimes people that don't even have a criminal background can have the same barriers. First barrier a lot of people have is transportation. You know, whether it's don't have a driver's license, don't have a vehicle, you live in a rural area that public transportation doesn't service, or where you need to go to, whether it's to work or to bring your children to school, isn't on a public line, or you work third shift and the bus routes don't work during that same time frame. So transportation is a huge barrier when it comes to employment. The next one is childcare, and a lot of people saw this during COVID, you know, the need for childcare. And I know here in Pennsylvania, a lot of our lawmakers are trying to do what they can to help reduce that barrier and provide assistance to either employers, employees, childcare workers to help address this barrier. The next one is identification. Huge. If you do not have your I-9 documents, which is your social security card and a photo ID, you cannot legally work in the United States. I always say legally work because yes, some people can go and work under the table, but to get a legal job, you need to have those I-9 documents, photo ID and social security card. That's a huge barrier. They're not free. Now, duplicate social security cards are free, but to get your photo ID, sometimes it could cost up to $15, $20, $30. Even if you had one before, you just need to get it replaced. So if you're not working, finding those funds sometimes are really difficult. Then you resort back to that transportation issue. How are you going to go to whether it's DMV or here in Pennsylvania, PennDOT, to get those items? And this is the last one here is a huge one. Housing. If you are currently on parole or you have a criminal conviction in the past, it is very difficult for you to find housing unless you plan on purchasing a house. If you're looking to rent, that is a challenge. And I'm sure if you're on here and you fall under that, I'm not telling you anything new. That is just a really big challenge for those with a criminal background, unfortunately. And all of these items are barriers to employment. If you don't have transportation, how are you going to get to and from work? If you don't have ID, you can't get a legal job. If you have children at home and you don't have childcare, how can you go to work? And housing. If I don't have a place to live, what address am I going to put on my applications and for my employer? And if I don't have housing, how am I going to get ready for work every day? Things like that, and that security, those are basic needs. So those are some big employer barriers that I always share with employers to let them know if they have any way to help with this, with any of these barriers, that is a greater chance for them to get applicants for their open jobs. But I always like to share that because some people just really aren't aware that there are these great barriers to employment. So let's talk a little bit more about what we're here for today. So we went out and we talked to employers, and I should say this was all pre-COVID. So some things have changed, but not much has changed. But pre-COVID, this is what employers told us they wanted from entry-level applicants. The first one was career awareness. What do you actually have to do in an industry? Hands-on experience, and soft skills or career readiness skills. And if you are an employer on here or you work with employers, you're probably nodding your head saying, yep, that's exactly what we need. So I'm going to break it down a little bit. Career awareness. Where this came up was we were talking to construction employers, and they said that it amazed them how many people showed up to a construction job on day one and it did not come back on day two because the employee decided they didn't want to work in the sun, the mud, they didn't want to climb a ladder, they were afraid of heights, they didn't want to get dirty. And in my mind, when they told me that, I said, well, isn't that what construction is? But apparently a lot of employers or employees aren't aware of what the job entails. So it's really important that if somebody's going into a job or into a career, they understand what those job duties are. And there is a great resource for that. It's the ONET online. If you are not familiar with this site, I highly recommend that you check it out. There's a lot of great resources on there. And one of the things that we do with our inmates here in Pennsylvania in our education is we implement this in one of our classes, and we start with the interest profiler. And a lot of you may have already done something very similar when you were in junior high, or maybe like a junior or sophomore in high school, or you took the ASVAB. There's just a lot of questions. And at the end, it tells you that based on your answers, these are some careers that would interest you based on your answers. And so sometimes that's the first time somebody really asks them what they're interested in, or really took a note to find out realistically what they would be interested in or good at. The other thing that it does is once they show them that this is a career or a job, once you take that interest profiler, you can then dig down into that job. Find out those job duties, the skills, knowledge, tasks, and abilities. You know, it tells you very detailed how many hours you should expect to be on your feet in a day. Do you need to go into confined spaces? Do you need to know how to climb ladders? Do you need to be able to sit for long periods of time? Do you need to know certain math skills? It's very detailed. So those are the career awareness pieces that the employers said was lacking with entry-level applicants. They show up and have no idea what to expect on that job. So this is a great resource to go and do that. So just be aware of that whenever you're looking for a job. This is an example of our Pathway to Success class here in Pennsylvania Department of Corrections that we offer. And as you can see, it's 11 modules. It's about 60 hours. It's one full semester in our education inside our prisons. And module one, the very first thing they do on day one, ONET interest assessment. They do that and then they build up throughout the course. They're making a career plan on what they need to do while they're still inside prison to achieve that career goal. And then on the flip side, what do they need to do once they're released to continue and maintain or find that job that they're looking for? And part of it is they are really diving in on that ONET site to really find out that career awareness that employers said that they absolutely want. So the second thing that employers said they wanted is hands-on experience. A lot of employers said, hey, let us know that you know the difference between a wrench and a hammer. Little bit of hands-on experience. A lot of them will train you themselves. Just know a little bit, not just about the job, but have a little bit of hands-on experience. So we have some goals inside our state Department of Corrections. You know, inside the prison, it's ensuring inmates are job ready any step of incarceration. And on the outside, how do we assist employers with their workforce needs and show the benefit of hiring, you know, our population? So one of the things that we have inside our prisons, and the majority of state prisons have these, are inmate employment opportunities, where every prison is run like a little city. Somebody has to do the maintenance, the cooking, the cleaning, the landscaping, in our case here in Pennsylvania, snow shoveling. We have staff that do that, but then we have inmate workers that work alongside them doing that. That's where they're gaining that hands-on experience that employers are so in desperate need of and want. So with that, we really encourage our inmates that when they get out, put that work experience on their resumes and on their applications. Don't leave it blank. Don't leave your incarceration time blank on an application or a resume. That's just a huge red flag to an employer. They're going to wonder, well, why weren't you working during that time? Where were you? You know, did you not have a job? What's going on? That's just going to raise more flags. Whereas if you worked inside prison, jail, wherever you were, that's work experience. It doesn't matter if you were a block worker or a janitor, if you were a kitchen worker, you are learning and getting job experience and that hands-on experience that employers said they want. And we had one inmate, actually, I love the quote that they gave, and they said, this may not be the job you want, but you can learn something from it and it will give you something to put on your resume. And I love that because that was the way that he was encouraging other inmates to look at that inmate employment piece that, you know what, might not be what you want, put it on there anyway. And the third thing here is probably out of all three, the most critical one that employers really said they wanted. Soft skills or career readiness skills. There's a number of those out there, and a lot of people hear the word soft skills and you think you know what that is, but then whenever you just kind of start diving into it, you realize it's a lot more than maybe what you originally thought that it was. So I'm going to go over a few of them that are big key ones that employers are looking for. There's a lot more than the one, but there's reliability. Let me tell you, employers, when I started off saying that all of these three things were pre-COVID, I'm going to tell you right now, the number one thing that employers are telling me, well, number one and number two, that they are telling me that they want from an applicant, number one is a pulse, not even joking about that. And number two, show up to the job and work. That's all they want. They have people that are applying for jobs, never show up for the interview, or they will come to the interview and then never show up to work on day one. That's all they want. Show up. So if you are willing to check your pulse, make sure you have one, which if you're watching this right now, you do, and you are willing to go to work, you have no reason to not be working right now. And I actually go into our prisons and share that with our inmates and tell them that if they get out and they are not working, we need to take a really hard look at why are you not getting employed. Now, it might not be the job that you want right now or the career that you're looking for, but it could be a stepping stone. So just be really reliable. That is something that employers are so desperate for. Communication. You know, this is a little bit tough. When we are growing up and when we grow up, we're learning how to communicate with other people, usually from our parents, our teachers, aunts, uncles, people around us. Unfortunately, some people don't have those support systems in place to teach them how to properly communicate. And then if somebody goes into prison, that is a whole other set of communication skills that they're either learning or are being taught while they're incarcerated. Those communication skills that you use in prison do not fly on the outside here. Don't come out talking like you did when you were in prison. That is not going to work on the outside. So you need to fine-tune those communication skills a little bit, look at the environment, realize that, you know, you've got to be a little bit more professional. And sometimes, and there is a way to teach that and learn that. And there are some classes that you can take or workshops, but just really be cognizant of it and realize how you're speaking to people. The next thing is problem solving. Some of these I won't get into. Teamwork, oh my goodness, working with other people. That's a big challenge sometimes if you're coming out of incarceration. You know, trusting someone else to do something with you. That's really hard. So just willing to be as a team, work as a team, and be part of a team. That kind of goes back with that communication piece a little bit. You need good communication skills to be able to work as a team. Active listening. You know, we're all guilty of this. I'm very guilty of this. I will have a conversation with somebody and think that I am listening, but my mind is elsewhere and I'm really not actively listening. Or what a lot of people do is while people are talking to them, they're on their cell phone, you know, not really paying attention to what's going on. That's not active listening. You need to show someone that when you're speaking with them and you're engaging with them, that you are actively listening to them and paying attention and willing to engage with them. Integrity, that's another big thing. Decision making. You know, this is hard for some people. Maybe you've never been given the opportunity to make decisions. But just, you know, sometimes that's something that you're going to need to be able to do. You're going to need to be able to decide, am I going to work today or am I not going to work today? That's a decision that you choose to make. And attention to detail. You know, employers want to make sure that they are getting people that are doing the job and doing the job according to the way that they want it done. So all of these are skills that sometimes, a lot of these skills you just learn growing up and you don't ever think about the fact that you were taught these skills. But unfortunately, there's some people that didn't have the opportunity to learn these skills. So now they have to actively go out to learn them. So just getting an idea and understanding that employers are looking for this. As I said, pulse, willing to show up, work well with other people of other sexes, other, you know, nationalities. It doesn't matter. Just being able to work with other people is, and that's where that teamwork piece comes in. So let's talk a little bit about interviewing. This is huge. You know, personal appearance and dress. Whenever you walk in to do an interview, outside of your resume or application, where that's pretty much the first time they're getting to see you or meet you, that's like your first impression. This is the first in-person impression that you're going to make. So here, these are some tips and tricks, and I'll leave it on the screen here for a little bit. You know, make sure that you're neat and clean. There's some do's and don'ts for women and men on here. And the biggest tip on this one is if you are not sure how to dress for the interview, just call it an ask. You know, dress for the job that you want because that you're going for. Don't show up in construction gear if you're going in for a receptionist job. You know, just find out kind of what the job is, understand that job, look into it a little bit, the company, but honestly, just give them a call and just say, you know, I have an interview with so-and-so in this department for the position as this. Could you please tell me what would be appropriate dress for your company? It's okay to do that. Absolutely okay to do that. So here's where we get into some interviewing tips. All right. So, and this is a big one. Let your prospective employer know that you take responsibility for your offense. Here is the thing. Do not lie. Be honest. Be upfront. If you have a criminal conviction on your record, they are going to find out, whether it's before your interview, whether it's after your interview. It could be after you're already there for a year or two. Google gives everybody the opportunity to look anybody up. You can Google anyone and find out something about them. So if you think that your criminal conviction cannot be found out unless they do a background check, that's not necessarily true. Google is everywhere. So be honest. Don't hide. The biggest thing I can say is practice, practice, practice. Practice how you address that question. You don't make excuses or place blame. You want to take responsibility. Do not go into detail. You do not need to list out all of your charges and the time that you spent. You do not need to do that. The biggest thing is just be honest. So this right here is an example of a 30-second commercial. This was not, I did not create this. Actually, Indiana Department of Corrections, I think, created this. And when I was in California, I came across it and loved it. So we shared it here in PA. Is we encourage our reentrants that when they go in for a job interview, as soon as they walk in the door and the person greets them, start your commercial, okay? First off, I thank you for the opportunity for this interview today. If I could have 30 seconds before we begin, there is something I would like to share with you. Pause, wait for them to say it's okay. Sometimes that's really hard to do that pause. Once they say that is okay, then go into your commercial. Think of it like a sandwich. You know, you got the bread, you got the middle part, you got the other piece of bread, okay? Those bread pieces are holding in all that other stuff. Those two bread pieces, those are the positives that you've done. You want to start with a positive, you know, or at least not necessarily a positive, but like laying the framework for it, you know. I did something wrong, I made a mistake, but this is what I did while I was incarcerated. This is what I've done to better myself. And then you want to tell them, and you want to end it on, this is how I can be an asset to you and your company. That's how you want to end it. You want to sell yourself to them. Tell them how you better. So that way, first off, by going in and doing it at the front of the interview, think of it like a big elephant in a room. If I'm going into an interview, I'm already going to be nervous. But if I have this elephant following me everywhere I go, that I have a criminal conviction, and I've got to sit with this elephant next to me during the whole interview, waiting for them to ask me about this criminal, if I have a criminal conviction or not, all I'm going to be focusing on is this elephant sitting next to me. So by doing this at the very beginning, you are kicking that elephant out of the room, out of that interview with you, and now you are in there by yourself, and you get to now showcase and show that employer how you are a benefit to them and their company. That is the important thing, okay? The only other thing that I will say about this commercial piece is, if at the end of you telling them the commercial, they tell you that they did not realize that you had a criminal conviction and unfortunately they cannot consider you for that position, thank them for the opportunity to speak to them and graciously leave. It will be hard to do, but by doing this at the beginning, you will have now saved them time, and you have not wasted your time by doing an interview for a job that you're not even able to get, okay? So take this as an example. At the bottom of ours, we have blank lines at the bottom of the commercial for our inmates inside our prisons to write their own commercial. Write it, practice it, share it with others, see, you know, if you've memorized it enough and how you're coming across. But the biggest thing is be honest. You don't have to be descriptive. Be honest, sell yourself, tell them how you can be a benefit to their company. So with that, there's some other benefits, not just your own personal benefits of hiring a reentrant. There's a lot of benefits to an employer. And if you understand what these benefits are that you can share with them, you're doing exactly what I do in educating people on these benefits. So the big one is parole support. If you are currently on parole, you're probably thinking, I don't want parole anywhere near me. How are they a benefit? They can be your biggest cheerleader. They want you to work because that's probably part of your parole conditions. They want you to work. They want to encourage you to work because if you're working, you're staying out of trouble and out of prison. Plain and simple. And so therefore, I know here in Pennsylvania, we do everything we can to make sure that our reentrants are working. We're not going to go in on a job site with SWAT gear, guns blazing, badges blazing, everything saying, parole's here. No, that's not what we want to do. We want to be a support to an employer. We want to be there to help employers. If an employer says, hey, I need Johnny to go with me, you know, 100 miles away to this job site, we want to be able to support that. And having that communication is how that can happen. The other thing is sharing with employers, hey, you know what? We have great people coming out of prison. They could have gone through vocational training. They could have got nationally accredited certifications. They could have these inmate work experiences where they already have that hands-on piece. But a lot of employers just see somebody as, oh, well, they were in prison. What did they do? They just sat in their cell all day. They just hung out with gangs. They just lifted weights. That's really not, some of that does happen in prison, don't get me wrong. But a lot of inmates in prison are bettering themselves. They're going to school, they're getting their high school diploma, GED, they're getting vocational training, certifications, inmate employment. We need to tell employers that. So that way they don't just look at you as somebody coming out of prison, but they're looking at you as, oh, they're exactly what I need. Even though they have a criminal background, everything else that they have is exactly what I need. So maybe they'll look past that criminal background piece. Then there's work opportunity tax credit and federal bonding. So these are the federal programs that a lot of employers don't know about, and a lot of them are actually not aware of, and a lot of them don't use it either. So WOTC, or the Work Opportunity Tax Credit, what that is that's a tax credit that employers are able to get for hiring somebody that's formerly incarcerated. There are a number of other populations that fall under there also. There's veterans, there's displaced home workers, things like that. But one of the categories is somebody that was formerly incarcerated. So they're able to get a tax credit for hiring you. That's a win-win for them. The next thing is federal bonding. They can get a bond for up to $5,000 free, no premium, no deductible for the first 6 months of hiring you. That might give them a little bit of insurance, to feel okay with hiring somebody with a criminal background if they're a little hesitant to it. But it's something that's free. Nobody ever calls, employers rarely call. The gentleman here in Pennsylvania that handles this one, I think he said maybe 1% of employers ever call and get the bond. Nobody's ever using this program, and it's a great program for them to use. And like I said, that's not a Pennsylvania program. That is actually a federal program. Same thing with the WOTC. So those are things that if anybody is interested in, I encourage you guys to look more into it. If you fall under one of those categories that qualify for WOTC or federal bonding, you actually can take an information sheet with you on an interview and share it with them. It might be the first time they ever hear about it. It could be because you're sharing it with them. Feel free to do that. So this was a quote that I came across. Why we don't ask for help even when we need it. I am very guilty of this. I am not one that asks for help. Usually, very rarely do I ask for help. A lot of people that don't ask for help because they don't know who or where to go to ask for help. So I have a few resources here that I'm going to share to help when it comes to employment or other resources. Those barriers that we talked about, the childcare, transportation, ID, and housing. These are some great resources that can help you with maybe some of those barriers. American Job Centers. These are named different across the United States, but the federal name is America's Job Centers. Here in Pennsylvania, they're known as the PA Career Link. Other areas call them the Career One-Stop Centers. So they're called something different, but those are places where you can go in and get services, workshops, help with employment. There's funding available. It's called WIOA funding. It's WIOA funding that's available that actually can help pay for training and high priority occupations in areas. If you fall under a category, and reentrants are one of those categories, you can go in and ask and see if they can train you in that, like welding, CDL. They'll pay for you to go to that school and go through that training. So definitely go to the America's Job Centers. That is where those fundings sit. Your parole agents, I've already mentioned this. Here in Pennsylvania, we have what are called community reentry parole agents. They are not field agents where they carry a caseload. They actually work in the communities where our reentrants reside, and they are the boots on the ground in the community. They know where to find housing, where to find employment, where to get clothing, anything that they need, in the community. So look at your parole agents, see if there's other parole agents in your area, in your state that are something that do something similar. But think of them as a resource, not just a hindrance or somebody that's going to send you back to jail. The next thing is reentry coalitions. We have a lot of these here in Pennsylvania. A lot of counties have them. I'm not sure if other states, actually I do know that other states do have them. So look around, see if there's reentry coalitions that you become a part of. Because here's the thing, especially here in Pennsylvania, I know that we do this. Our reentry coalitions cannot make an impact without knowing from those that we're trying to support what they need. That's you as a reentrant. If we don't have you as part of those coalitions, we're just going to spin our wheels thinking we know what you want or what you need. We need your input. We need you to be part of these coalitions and these reentry coalitions. There's also employers that are on the reentry coalition. There's community providers, wide variety of services that are available. So look around, see if you have reentry coalitions that maybe you can become a part of and help with. And 211, that's a national resource. I did look to make sure it wasn't just the Pennsylvania one. It is a national resource where you can go and find out what services are available in your area that you might be in need of. Oh, this is our community reentry parole agent flyer. It gives a little bit of what the services are that they offer here in Pennsylvania. And like I said, we do this in Pennsylvania. All of our counties have it. Anybody that comes out on state parole has an initial orientation with our CRPA, and they just go over with them, hey, what are some services that you need? What are some help that you need? I'm here anytime. So that is what our CRPAs do. So I'm going to start wrapping this up a little bit. So what's in it for me? If you guys have ever heard that term, with them, what's in it for me? That is really what employers are saying. When I'm usually talking to employers, this is the biggest thing, is they want to know, well, what's in it for me? You're telling me to hire this population. What's in it for me as an employer? Well, guess what? There's a lot of things that you can share with them that is a benefit and is in it for them. You can get experience. They can get experienced candidates. They might have industry certifications, dedicated worker, longer employee retention. Those are two big things right now. Not only are employers having a hard time finding employees, they're having a hard time retaining employees. We have found from other employers that told us that hiring somebody with a criminal conviction most of the time are the hardest worker, and they will stay around the longest because that employer gave them an opportunity and gave them a chance when no one else would. So that reentrant wants to stay around with them. They want to stay with that company and move up in that company. We have some great success stories that are going on in a variety of our employers that we work with. So sharing that information with employers is part of that with them. Now, what's in it for me? There's the tax credit, the bonding we already talked about. And then sometimes if that feel-good stuff doesn't work, you can talk to them about money, which is the tax credit bonding, but also it's a reduction in recidivism and taxpayer dollars. If employers are giving you an opportunity to work, that means they're giving you the opportunity to stay out of prison, which in turn, they don't have to use their taxpayer dollars to house you in prison. It's reciprocal, okay? They need you just as you need them. All right, so it's a matter of showing them why they need you. It all reverts back to that commercial and everything. How can you benefit them? So I'm going to end on this. I stumbled across this book by this gentleman who's talking about untapped population. And at the very beginning of this book, and it's funny, I actually have the book sitting right here. This is not an ad or anything. I just love this book. At the very beginning, before it even starts anything, it says a note to the currently incarcerated. And as you can see, I already underlined stuff. So the very first part of this that I absolutely love says, since the day you entered prison or jail, you probably have felt that you are a burden to your family, a burden to your friends, to your community, to your country. You are not a burden. You are a resource. Our country is running out of the workforce we need to grow and prosper. The millions of people who, because of a criminal record, are not employed to the best of their potential are our best solution to this problem. And this is my favorite part right here. This means you are a resource for your family, a resource for your friends, for your community, for your country, not a burden. That is the very beginning of this book, and from that I loved it because those are no truer words out there. You're a resource, okay? Think of it as that, and then it's a matter of how do you sell yourself to share with the employer that you are a resource to them, okay? Here's my contact information if anybody has any specific questions, or if we don't get to your questions today, or if you have specific things you maybe don't want to share with everybody and you want to reach out to me, please feel free to reach out to me anytime. Even if you're not in Pennsylvania, I might be able to direct you to someone else as a resource, I'm not sure. But from there, I believe we're going to go to questions.
Yes, we are going into questions. I'm going to actually leave this on the screen just in case anyone wants to jot your information down at all. But I just want to say thank you so much. This was an amazing session with you. And I also just wanted to note we had a lot of people join in later before we get in the Q&A. I don't know if people realize that you talk to employers. So there are employers out there that do want to hire reentrants, because like you said, a lot of people might think that they are a burden or whatever, and that employers don't want to help or hire them. And there are employers out there that do want to hire you. So that was a great way to end it. And just so everyone knows, she does talk to employers that actually do want to help.
I do. And that's one of my favorite things to do is actually go in and talk to the inmates that are still incarcerated, to tell them that I talk to employers and tell them, I'm very honest with them. And I say, don't listen to your friends, your family, the television, whoever's in your ear telling you that nobody's going to hire you when you get out, because it's a lie. I talk to employers on a daily basis, and every day employers are coming to me saying, I need people. What can you do for me? So they're out there.
They're out there. Yeah.
There are employers out there that will hire you. Not every employer, but there are a lot of employers, and they might advertise it. That's another thing, is a lot of employers don't want to be known as second chance employers or to advertise. And that's one of the things that I always tell employers also, is I said, I don't go up to people and say, hi, I'm Dorenda Hamarlund, I've never been arrested, have you? You don't go up to people that you're working with every day. You don't know necessarily who's sitting next to you in the office that may or may not have a criminal conviction. I don't know who does and doesn't. That's not something that you generally go around and ask. So, that's one of the things that employers need to get. A lot of employers are worried about that. Like, what is that stigma from the other, either employer or employees or from our customers? And that's what I pretty much tell them, is I say, well, look, it's none of their business. Why do they need to know if somebody's been pulled over and got convicted of a DUI before? If they're going to sit there and just do it via telemarketer or something. I mean,
Yeah.
So it really doesn't matter. There's jobs out there.
Yep, definitely. So then I will go into some of these questions here. Again, if anyone has any, feel free to write some in. There are a couple in here already. So I will start with one from somebody. And they said, my background check was unable to verify my prison employment. The institution said I never worked there. How can this be verified?
So it depends on the state. So I can tell you here in Pennsylvania, we have policies against verifying employment for the incarcerated. However, we knew that was going to be a problem, so we actually created a resume report that anybody in Pennsylvania State Prison that has ever had Pennsylvania State Prison time, they can actually get with any DOC employee, parole employee, whatever, and get a copy of their resume report, and it has all of their inmate work history on it. So I would just suggest that from whatever DOC, county jail, wherever that you were released from, I would maybe reach out to them and ask them to see if they have a report of some sort of your inmate employment. But you are correct. That is something that unfortunately sometimes we do have that policy. It's part of some personal type information we can't release. So that was our workaround, was a resume report. But that's a great question. Definitely reach out to the prisons or the county jails and find out. But if you're from Pennsylvania, reach out to me. I can do that for you.
Awesome. So then there's another one. If a job I'm applying to only asks if you have a felony and I have a misdemeanor, should I assume they don't care about a misdemeanor?
Not necessarily. Honestly, err on the safe side. be cautious, be honest, be upfront, because if you make that assumption and they do a background check and they see the misdemeanor, they're going to think that you're lying, even though they only ask for felonies. I get that. It's better to be upfront and honest about it than to appear like you are trying to hide something. That would be my suggestion.
And then how does this work for people on probation with aggressive charges?
So like violent charges, aggressive charges, you know what? I work with everybody. I talk to employers all the time. And the way that the EEOC law works is that employers cannot, they cannot discriminate on hiring you unless it is directly related to the job, you know, and your charges. If your charges have nothing to do with the job that you are applying for and that you are hired to do, there's laws that prevent them from dismissing you or not hiring you. So unless, it doesn't matter. I mean, honestly, I talk to employers every day. And when I talk to employers, that is one of the questions that I ask them. Are there any convictions that you cannot or will not hire for based on the job? And yes, there are some, but I will tell you, because of the state of the economy and the unemployment right now, almost every single one of them tell me it's on a case-by-case basis. They want to look and they want to see what it is. They want to hear your side of it. Because if you say that you were aggressive or whatever, it could have been 20 years ago and it's still showing up, but you've done all this other things since then. That's where that 30-second commercial and doing that sandwich of showing how you're a benefit to them helps.
Absolutely. Do you have time for a couple more? We got a couple in here.
Really?
Perfect. So then, can individuals get reference letters from prison employment?
So depends on the state. I can tell you here, everything depends on the state.
Yeah.
Here in Pennsylvania, and it's funny that you mentioned that. I remember when I first moved here, I saw a policy on it in Pennsylvania that we were not allowed to give reference letters. And since I've been bringing it up the last couple of years, I can no longer find that policy. So I am not sure right now. So here in Pennsylvania, we're looking to see how we can do that. What is the best way to do that? Because here's the thing. Employees at the prison don't want to put their name on something because they don't want it to come back on them. There's that whole liability thing. Then there's also, if you're working, like for instance, I work for the Commonwealth, am I doing this on behalf of the Commonwealth? I might not be able to do that, you know, put my name to something. So it really depends on the state and the instance. So I would check with the individual institution that you were at, because I also don't know what federal what their guidelines are for it. But I can tell you that here in PA, we are looking to try to streamline that and make it more of a standardized either reference letter or something for here in PA.
Awesome. So I'll just do these last two. And then again, I'm just going to note that your information is here if anyone wants to get in direct contact with you with any other questions. And thank you again for that. I'm sure a lot of people will be very happy to be able to do that. So do you have any, and this question might go towards them reaching out, but do you have any sample resumes that show how you indicate your incarceration and the employment gap it creates?
So here's the thing. Hopefully, while you were incarcerated, there is no gap. Hopefully you did something while you were in there, whether you were going to school while you were inside or you were working. That would be fantastic. If not, then you're going to have to leave that gap in there. And then you're just going to have to verbally, and that would just be assuming that you sat in your cell and did nothing while you were inside. But if you did something, if you volunteered, you know, working in activities, or if you worked, or if you did a correctional industry, or if you were going to school and getting your high school diploma, GED, or something, put that on there. Because that would be part of your work experience. Outside of that, you're going to have to leave it blank and just kind of leave it up to them to ask about that blank piece of it. But like I said, hopefully you did something while you were inside during that time so you can put in there. And I can tell you the biggest question that we get on the application piece for the inmate work experience is, well, what do I put down as the employer? So we tell those here in PA, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, they were your employer. You know, every state might have a different answer for that, but I can tell you here in Pennsylvania, Commonwealth of PA was their employer while they were incarcerated. They don't need to put, I was at State Correctional Institution Health. They don't need to do that. Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
All right, so then the last question I will ask here, I applied for a work from home job and have 3 felonies, which 2 are aggressive. I've been denied 6 times for jobs. What should I say?
Wow. That is a very interesting question, because I would almost have, okay, so if they denied it, are they denying you and are they specifically telling you it's based on your background check? Because I believe they have to give you a letter or something that tells you about that, if they've done that. If that is the case, you can actually go to EEOC and file a thing and just say, you know, hey, they're not hiring me based on this. And then it kind of falls onto the employer to come back. It wouldn't hurt to reach out. And EEOC is the Equal Employment Opportunity. And just reach out to them and ask them, because that, especially if it's a work from home type thing, unless the aggressive piece was maybe electronic, digital, because if you're working from home and you're going to be on a computer, or you're going to be talking to people, and maybe your convictions were you know, stalking or, you know, verbally attacking somebody or something like that, and how that can kind of correlate. It also really depends on the job. But honestly, if they've given you a letter that it's based on your background, yeah, I would reach out to EEO and just kind of follow up with them and ask, because that's really curious.
Absolutely. All right, so I will end it here then. And again, want to thank you so very much, Dorenda. This was a great presentation. And just reiterate one more time that her information is here if you'd like to reach out at all with any other questions. And I do want to note, if you do like these kind of Q&A presentations, our next one will actually just be a full Ask Me Anything with the speaker, Noelle Holliday, and she will be answering any kind of job seeking questions that you might have with your job search. So yes, I will end it here. And thank you again, and I hope everybody has a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dorenda.
Thank you.